taking a tour around campus.
Listen, I'm just giving you all opportunities.
Right.
Okay, are we ready?
Oh, not yet.
Oh, sorry.
Still going in. Now we're ready.
Okay. All right, so we'll start this emergency student fees meeting. I'm actually going to start it off by just explaining a little bit of the scenario, and then I'm going to hand it over to David so he can explain sort of what we're looking at. So we sent the student fees bill through the Senate, right, and then onto the president. And he came back to student government with the suggestion that we reduce student fees so that they're flat from last year. That suggestion is essentially because of the COVID-19 crisis and the problems that are going to be facing families and covering the cost of college. So they want to do their best to keep costs flat or below what they were last year. So, but yeah, so flat. So essentially what we're looking at is getting down 1.5% in student fees. And we have some broad approaches that we're gonna sort of pitch as an idea, and then obviously anyone is welcome to chime in and say what they think about those approaches. So, or propose something different. Yeah, so I think that's about sums it up. Other region institutions are trying to do the same thing, keeping their tuition and fees flat for students across the state. So does anyone have any questions or anything like that on the principle of why we're back? No? Okay.
Anne had a question.
Oh, Anne, sorry.
Oh, do you mind elaborating more by whenever you mean by flat?
So yeah, so essentially what it means is that we wouldn't have a percentage increase from last year. So last year, this year we were going to increase fees by 1.5%. And Rija did just correct me. She said that it was a suggestion. It wasn't, what did you say? Sorry. Not a suggestion. He just asked us to look at fees one more time in light of the new crisis. Is that better? I'm relaying what Rija relayed to me. So
yeah, thank you.
The 1.5% is just, that's what we were going to increase in fees. And the goal is to get it so that it's the same amount that students would be paying as last year. Does that answer the question, Anne?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns? All right, so then I'll hand it over to David, if that's okay with you, David, and I'll just have you explain the spreadsheet that you showed us the other day and a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish, or what are some of the options to accomplish that goal. Sound good?
Hi guys, my name is David Miller. I'm the university's budget director and also the interim IT director right now. And I'm going to share my screen here with you. And it'll look a little bit different than the version that that I think Gabe probably just emailed to all of you. That's because one of my colleagues in the budget office initially put this together, and all the numbers that you have in the version that you just received should be exactly the same. I just made some adjustments here because I'm not as smart as Lauren is, and so I could try and remember what is in these different scenarios to help me out a little bit as I talk to you guys today. So what you see on your screen here is one column is column U, which outlines what the SGA Student Fees Committee adopted, as well as the overall student government. And we'll just scroll down just real quick just to revisit the overall numbers. And so that was $10,074,752. In addition to that, the Student Fees Committee recommended and was adopted to sweep cash of, I believe, $76,000 from the individual programs that are funded through student fees and set those dollars aside to start to build up a contingency so that when shortfalls do occur, instead of cutting the programs, there is a rainy day fund, if you will, that could be tapped into so that dramatic cuts like we're going to be talking about here today wouldn't need to occur. So then in this discussion regarding what would, let me back up a second. Essentially, Lauren put this together to try and frame what the impact would be on each of the individual programs funded through student fees in order to help educate you as you dialogue on how you might want to move forward. And what she did was she separated it into kind of basically two scenarios. The first scenario says, what if instead of the 1.5% rate increase, there was no rate increase? You maintain that $76,000 reserve for the rainy day fund, and then there was no adjustments for a likely shortfall to occur in the fall. And so what I mean by shortfall, we've done some modeling and met with some of the SGA officers earlier to outline for them what we thought could be the impacts from the pandemic on student fee collections. And what we're estimating right now, and you have to know that there's no precedent for what's occurring right now. There isn't a good historical basis to try and estimate what the future might look like. But what we are seeing right now in the sense of headcount and enrollment and credit hours enrollment for the fall is about a 6% decline. My gut tells me that that will improve as we continue to work through the summer and folks wait to see what actually happens in the fall. But basically, we use that as our starting point to estimate what a potential shortfall would be. So basically, using that 6% reduction, the shortfall could be around at $550,000. So scenario one says we don't address any of that potential shortfall. It is merely what would be an across-the-board adjustment for every program if there was no rate increase and the $76,000 reserve was maintained. And there's one exception I need to outline for you. Within the budget of student fees is funded the debt service on the Radigan Student Center. I'm afraid there aren't any options of reducing that debt service. And so when Lauren structured this table, she did not make any adjustments to those numbers. So those are always held constant. The second scenario says, okay, what if you did no rate increase? You did adjust for the potential shortfall of $549,000, but you still maintain that $76,000 reserve to set aside for the future as a rainy day reserve. And then scenario three says, what if you had no rate increase? Again, just like scenario two, you adjust for the potential of the shortfall of $549,000. But instead of setting aside that $76,000 reserve for a future rainy day fund, instead you use that $76,000 to offset the $549,000 shortfall that's expected. And so that's why you see, if you just kind of look at this first program here in EOF, Culture Ambassador Program, you see why the potential reduction for them is a little bit better in scenario three, a little bit less, I guess, if you will, than scenario two. And that's because scenario three is saying, we'll take those dollars that were intended for the future of a rainy day reserve and use them in fiscal year 2021, next fall. Does anybody have any questions just on that general structure of the scenarios that I can try and address?
Yeah, I have a question. So when we say adjusting for a shortfall, are we adjusting for the potential loss of revenue from having less students, or are we adjusting for the potential need for less money because there are going to be less students? Like, can you kind of further explain like what adjusting for that shortfall actually means?
It's more the former, adjusting for the expectation of less students. But in some ways, though, I think what you outlined is kind of interconnected, though, too. And towards the bottom, and this should match up to your totals too. You see what the total budget variance would be from what was adopted. Again, this is set up as if everybody was treated exactly the same. This is not necessarily a recommendation of how this could or should be addressed. It is merely trying to frame the significance of what it could look like if one of these three scenarios were chosen. You know, in creating financial scenarios, it's pretty much unlimited, the number of scenarios that we can create for consideration. And then the other thing about the spreadsheet that I would just outline for you is that Lauren did set it up where if instead of looking at being flat and going from 1.5 to 0%, she also set it up so, you know, you could plug in maybe what if you reduce the increase to 1% or something like that, you could see what the numbers look like from that too.
David, can you send me this version? Because it looks a lot
Sure.
more clear and easier for me to understand too.
If you could you send it out? That way we all have it.
Yeah, let me do that.
So does everyone kind of understand what we need to try and accomplish today? I think going back to the points that Colleen and Ridja mentioned, I think, and again, the impetus of what we're trying to have this conversation for is not to necessarily redo the entire student fees process again. That's not what I think any of us really want to do. And it's also not the directive from the executive order to do. It's mainly looking at, do we maintain the recommendation in which the 60-second session passed, recognizing a month ago, we had absolutely no idea where we would be at today. So the question truly is, do we keep the 1.5? Do we recommend a different number, or do we come in flat? And from coming in flat, how do we address the scenarios in which to make adjustments for? And then I think the second part with the other two scenarios of, do we take into account the potential scenario? David, can you talk a little bit about kind of the conversation we had earlier this week about thinking about how to address the scenario, whether or not that should be, or the shortfall, whether or not that should be a thing we talk about now or talk about later? Can you kind of give that point, and I can't remember the point you made, but it was a really good point about the thoughts about addressing a shortfall.
Gosh, Gabe, I wish I remembered what.
I think it was something like, you know, not necessarily like planning for now is something that we don't 100% know of, or like not like. Colleen, do you remember?
Yeah, Gabe, was it, David, was it that like, I think it was when I asked you what you would suggest and you said like, maybe just like don't overreact, or that kind of, does that jog your memory a little bit, or?
Yeah, I think what I suggested or guidance was the worst thing that we can do is try to overreact in a financial crisis and make a decision that we can't come back from. Instead, sometimes it's better to wait until we see the actual data and information come in. But that doesn't mean that we don't prepare and plan for what the worst or sometimes what the worst case might be. You know, in something that Dr. Hall talked about too is that there's kind of two separate issues here, and it might be good to separate both of them when you think about them in your mind. The one issue is the rate increase and the impact that has on students who are enrolling and their current financial conditions that they're encountering because of the effects of the pandemic. The other issue is the $550,000 potential shortfall, which has a big question mark on it in the sense of what size that really will be and what the actual outcomes will be. But without a doubt, we will definitely have some type of shortfall. It's just framing what the size of it is. That's pretty difficult right now. Even though those are kind of interconnected issues, they're also separate issues. Gosh, was that helpful at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, David. Thank you. Yeah, I think the other thing to remember is that, this is a suggestion that, or not a suggestion, this is, something that the president wanted us to talk about, but he also wanted us to know that obviously we have like full autonomy over making that decision, right? So don't feel pressured that we have to reduce down from 1.5. And I didn't really lay that out. But I think also you have to think, we're going to have to be able to defend that decision, which says that we don't, right? And that kind of thing. And ultimately, the president does have the ability to change the fee before it goes to K board. So just bearing all of those things in mind. So does anyone have any questions about what David presented or what we need to talk about or need to address?
Yeah, I think I had a conversation yesterday with Gabe, Risha, and Mackenzie, where we had talked about what the other K-board schools are planning on doing with their student fees and their tuition. And I think that if we could talk about those numbers in this case, I think that would be really helpful so that we can at least kind of have in the back of our minds like what KU, K-State, or Hayes, ESU are planning on doing.
I think having a frame of reference is good, Olivia. Risha, do you want to address that?
Yeah, excuse me. So other universities like KU and K-State are looking at keeping their tuition and fees flat, while universities like ESU, which is Emporia State, they're maybe looking at increasing it by 3%, while Fort Hayes is also increasing or intending to increase by 3.75% so far. None of those things are in place yet fully, but that is what they intend on doing so far. And so while you make these decisions, just keep in mind that these universities are slightly different than ours, but also what we do, it depends on, sometimes what our sister universities are doing as well.
All right. Are there any other questions or?
So I think, again, this is the time to ask those questions while we have David on the call. I know he has another meeting to get to, but if you have other questions about this, anything, in his realm of knowledge, please ask those because once he leaves, he's gone.
So I do have one question for you, David. So, okay, let's say, there is a shortfall and we won't know for each semester until, we're nearing the end of the semester officially what that is. So, just sort of looking forward to student fees next year, what does it look like if there is a shortfall? Will that student fees committee, will they take care of it then, or will they need to take care of it a little bit earlier? Do you know what it would look like since we're sort of in uncharted territory?
Yeah, so I think your question is if, when we kind of separate these two issues, if the committee was to make a decision on the rate, but then not make a decision necessarily on the shortfall because we don't have solid data to really model off of or try to frame more precisely what that shortfall could look like. To me, I really think we would want to bring the student fees committee together as soon as we have a good idea in the fall that there is going to be a shortfall and that we can at least semi-reliably put a dollar amount to it. I really would not want to wait until our normal process of when the student fees committee convenes in the spring.
That David would be able to adjust fiscal year 21's potential shortfall in the sense of then instituting budget cuts to bring it back to a balanced budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And follow up, would that be looking at the year, or would that just be a semester by semester? Since we look at student fees for the entire academic year or the entire fiscal year, if we reassembled the committee in the fall, would that just be looking at the fall section and then making thoughts for the spring, or would we have to wait until would we have to understand a little bit more about what numbers might look like for spring semester?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer that, Gabe, because it would probably be dependent on what the environment was looking like in the fall. Usually, in a normal academic year cycle, normally fall and spring kind of mirror each other for the biggest part. There's always variances, but for the biggest part, they normally mirror each other. So if we're feeling confident about kind of where we are, and we're thinking that there aren't going to be impacts on our operations because of the pandemic coming back or something, I think we would want to try and do it all at one time.
Awesome. Thank you.
David, in your opinion, do you think there's a potential negative to waiting? Does that make sense? Are there positives or negatives to either side? Besides the overreacting, is there a potential negative to waiting? Yeah.
So a positive to waiting, I guess one thing I would tell you, we're seeing the same thing on the university's operations, is that spending trends are down a lot, and obviously that makes sense. People aren't on campus. Some of the things a lot of the things we would normally be spending money on to support the students on campus aren't occurring now, and staff and faculty travel and those things, those are all down. And so the same thing has got to be and should be occurring within these programs too. I know we had this discussion, before on Baja and the development and formula team. They're not on campus. That I have to suspect that they're probably not working on their cars like they normally would. And so that means that a lot of these programs are probably generating some savings from what they normally would have otherwise spent. So that creates an opportunity for next year in the discussions of having a cut. I think the negative side of waiting would be if the shortfall is even larger than what's being projected here. The 550,000 in the sense of a purely one-time type of adjustment, I don't think is something that can't be overcome. But the challenge would be if it becomes more permanent and long-term of trying to address it, that also would be a risk. But reality is we probably have that risk no matter what. And there's,
yeah. Are there any more questions or no? Okay. All right. Well, actually, David, one last question, just clarification. All of the percentages are based off of what SGA adopted, correct? Not what was recommended. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just quick point. So, all right. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. Do you have anything else that you think we should think about, David, as we go through this? Or?
No, the only thing I would pass along, I guess, is one. This is a tough subject to kind of work through, in the sense of some of these budgets took cuts already in the recommendations from the committee, so that's tough to think through. The other thing is, and then trying to weigh that with the impact on students is tough. The other thing is you're going through now the exact same thing that the university leadership is going through, as well as when all of you start your careers, when it comes to you making decisions about things, a lot of times you'll be making decisions on things with incomplete information. And so in that sense, this is a great example for a lot of you of what you're going to encounter when you do start your professional careers. So.
It's that good old applied learning.
Hey, David, one last final question for you. Oh goodness, dang it. I'm just losing it. Oh, that was it. I know that we've talked about how each of these departments is preparing for these potential shortfalls.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit as well?
Yeah, Dr. Hall outlined that she's asked everybody, especially those that report to her, to be thinking about, and Gabe might have to jump in, he might know the exact percentages, but I think she asked them all to be thinking about what like a 4%, a 6%, and a 10% reduction scenario could look like, and for them to be thinking about what those options are.
Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah, across the board in the Division of Student Affairs, so specifically the areas that like David mentioned, she's already asked the directors who receive student fee money to start working on what those potential numbers might be. The student government included, once we got that advice from Dr. Hall, Colleen and I began looking at what that adjustment might look like for our budgets. Right, even though ours functions a little bit differently, we still began looking at that. So they've started looking, making some of those adjustments. Of course, that's in preparation of potential the shortfall scenarios, in which is highlighted in scenario 2. Yeah, scenario 2. So yeah, we've begun looking at that, and that's unfortunately that's only the student affairs areas. I think that's some conversations that we'll need to be able to also have with the other areas that receive student fees from us as well.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that as that additional information comes in, if those all of that information will be relayed to those departments, and hopefully the goal is that they would start implementing those plans based off of information as it comes in.
Right.
That makes sense to everyone? Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you, David.
Thank you, everyone.
You're wonderful.
David, if we have any questions, oh, he's gone. Never mind. I'll just email him. If we have any questions, then we can email him.
Give him a call. I'm sure he'll answer. Okay, guys. So, what do we think with all of that?
Before we do that, so let's kind of way this might work, the way this could potentially work. So if nothing changes, and we continue and move on. If we make any decisions to change the package, it will have to be approved by the Senate again. So just bear in mind that that process of approval still continues because the Senate has to play a part in that as well. So just keep that in your thoughts. If anything changes, keep the 1.5. If we keep the 1.5, good, we move on. If we don't, then the Senate will have to reapprove that number from there.
And Gabe, since the Senate won't meet again until fall for a second read, will that impact anything like that?
We not necessarily. So we could theoretically, because we will enter recess, we could theoretically vote and pass the same meeting, or we can, if necessary, and the Senate doesn't feel comfortable doing that, then RIJA can call the Senate back into session for a second read and a vote. But we'll probably have to, because I also don't want to do it in the middle of your final exams, but just keep that in mind that the rules allow us in the Senate to vote on it next week, to debate and vote on it and ask questions. However, if this group feels in conversation with leadership, if we feel that we may need to give it a second read, knowing that the K-Board has pushed the deadline back, then we can look at calling the Senate back into an emergency session.
Can I just say something really quickly?
Yeah.
I feel like it's necessary to talk about the fact that this is a great opportunity to reprioritize based on the effects that the pandemic has had on our students. So just kind of looking at this as an opportunity to prioritize what we need to prioritize in this session. So just look at it as that in a positive light instead of as a bunch of hard work that we have to do. Thank you, guys.
I was wondering, Colleen, if you would be okay with this, of us deciding on the percentage first and then kind of working from there. So
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest is let's talk about the percentage. Just, do we want to get it down to a flat rate? What are your thoughts on it? And maybe we'll just start by going around. Would that be all right? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just does anyone want to start off? And then I'm gonna just go around my screen from that person. Do you want to start, Maggie? Okay.
I can start. I think we should get it down to a flat percentage, especially since this is really going to be affecting our students. And we are one of the cheapest schools in the state, if I can talk today. So I think even if we get it down to a flat rate and then kind of adjust from there, keeping as Mackenzie said, prioritizing what is important in this session, and then maybe spreading the cuts a little further to different areas. So that's my thoughts.
All right, Crystal, are you okay with going next?
So my kind of mindset is I would either like to see it flat or at a 0.5% increase. I think that we have the ability to reprioritize, as the Vice President said. And I think that, as David mentioned earlier, a lot of these services won't be available for students. And so that we can consider making some cuts with it in mind that we're not really, I don't feel like we're really cutting since these services wouldn't be used anyway, since so much was closed. And that's just all I really have.
So just really quick point of clarification, guys, right? Part of what David is talking about with that is a projection. Okay, so Baja hasn't been, these departments haven't been necessarily operating at full capacity over the summer. So especially the student groups haven't been operating at full capacity. But whether or not they open up for the fall, right, and whether or not they still need the funds depends on sort of how the university opens up in the fall, and what that looks like across the board. And so when we think about it, we also have to think there is this possibility, right, that we come back, and maybe a very strong possibility that we come back in the fall, and then there's this possibility that we don't, right? And so again, this incomplete information thing, yeah, just to elaborate on Crystal's point, it could be that we open in the fall and everyone gets back up to speed and they all go right into it and start spending money to accomplish their goals, right? But then it could also be that that's just not a possibility. Does that make sense to everyone as we consider this? It's both scenarios are possible, and so we do have to keep that in mind too. I don't know. Does that help, Crystal? Is that okay? Sorry, Crystal.
I think the one aspect though to think about with that is some of these departments have adjusted their offerings and have adjusted how they're functioning, right? I think everyone, us, we're meeting in Zoom, we're still doing all these other things. So I would just keep that thought in your head, as well as that even though if for some reason, we're still virtual, or for some reason, whatever, a lot of the departments who receive student fees, potentially some of the groups are adjusting to how they function. Not going to pick on the Sunflower, but the Sunflower has adjusted how they're functioning, utilizing the dollars that they have. So I would like you all to still keep that in the back of your heads, that some of these areas have made adjustments and more than likely are planning for adjustments in the fall. And I can't speak on behalf of any of them because I don't 100% know, but I would just keep that thought in your head as well.
Yeah, and just so you know, guys, as we go through, if I offer up more information, I'm not disagreeing with any points. I just there's been a lot of conversation around this, and I want to catch everyone up to what I know. Sorry, is that okay? Does that make sense? Okay, sorry. I'm trying to I don't want to push my opinion in any of this. I just want to make sure that everyone knows what I know. Okay, so Crystal, sorry. I feel did I cut you off? Did you have anything more? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, Grant, do you want to go next? Are you ready?
Yeah, I can go ahead and give my input. You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. basically, my input is similar to Senator Hall and Senator Zacharias. I personally would strongly prefer a flat budget that doesn't go above 0% increase. And frankly, I think it would be quite disappointing if it went above a 0.5% increase. In particular, I think this is an opportunity for the student fees process to kind of reclaim a status of being for students, in the sense that, like, students are struggling right now. There will be cuts, unfortunately, to all kinds of services. And not only will these services be reduced, which could increase savings unless we cut them. And I'm not saying we should cut them, that's just my opinion. But I just feel that people are struggling, and I think it is very important for us to acknowledge that people do need assistance. The students do need assistance right now. Like, there's a reason that there may be a 6% decrease in enrollment in the future, and give or take a couple of percentage points either way. But and that's because people are struggling, and it's not an ideal situation. So we will have to make some cutbacks, even if unless we just decide to go in the complete opposite direction and increase by 3% or more, which I don't think is ideal. So yeah.
Mackenzie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I think what everybody has been saying is 110% exactly what I agreed with. Something that really stuck with me a couple of days ago, it was yesterday maybe, when Ridge and I were meeting with the president, is that these are offices that our students need now more than ever. These are places, counseling and prevention services and student health are places that really are going to need this budget. And if we make cuts, or if we keep it at a flat rate, those departments need to be protected. But I think there is also an argument to say that if we do increase, if we keep the increase or make it less of an increase, go to 1% increase or 0.5% increase, that increase should go to those departments that are going to need it and that students are going to need more than ever when we come back to campus. So I think personally, I am on board with an increase as long as it goes specifically to student health and counseling and prevention services. And I don't want to say just departments that I think our students are going to need prioritized when we do get back to campus, because they're going to need it. And I think if we do an increase at all, that's where it needs to be. And that's what is best for students. I know that it's not the most clean cut, and I want to help our students in any way possible, but that's my opinion.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Also, to Mackenzie's point, right? Like, if you guys have any department, obviously you know this, but if you have any department that you think is going to need the funds, right, for the next year, we can alter the numbers that, like, David gave us to take them out of the percentage consideration for cuts. Does that make sense? Okay. And Gabe and I can try to do the spreadsheet as best we can. I think it's set up to be pretty easy, but we'll do our best. Okay, Olivia, do you want to give your opinion now?
Yeah, so I think that, you know, I kind of want to echo what everyone else said. I definitely think that we can't increase more than 1% or the 1.5%. Honestly, I don't really think that we should go even higher than 0.5% increase. I would like to see student fees stay flat. I mean, there are students who, if they see even if it's only like a $12 increase to them personally, that can keep someone from continuing their education here because they can't afford those $12. And so I think that, you know, it's important to think about those things, and important to think about that any increase will have an impact on students and whether or not they can continue their education here. And I also think that if we, no matter what we decide to do, if that's an increase, if that's keeping it flat, that we need to go through and reappropriate the way that funding is done. So kind of like with what Mackenzie was talking about, we need to put more emphasis on the programs that people are really, really going to need, like CAPS and student health. And there are obviously other programs that students are really going to need, and some things that aren't necessarily as dire to do this section, like this fee cycle. That's the word. This fee cycle that we don't necessarily need to fund right now. That maybe we could have if we weren't in a public health crisis, but we are. And so I definitely think that no matter what we do, we have to kind of reappropriate the way that funds are going.
Okay, so I'm going to go over to Zach next.
Yeah, so I was going to bring up the point that Mackenzie made of while there are offices that are adjusting to possibly not having some of the events or some of the programs that they budgeted for, there are offices that are seeing actually an increase in like students coming in. And I think that if we can, once we finish this discussion, look at the list of everyone and just like point out some of the offices or programs that are going to be essential to students during this time, and other ones that are making adjustments, like Gabe said, the Sunflower making adjustments. I know the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, the increase they asked for was for the Passage to Success program, and they're looking to move that to a virtual thing, so maybe they won't need as much of the money as they asked for. And I think that if we can decrease what we have to about the 0.5% that some people have talked about, and still find a way to get money to other programs, that'll be an ideal situation that'll basically benefit everyone. So yeah.
Anne, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everyone, everything they're saying, keeping the fees flat, and definitely what Mackenzie said, for the programs that are necessary for students during this unprecedented time. That's all I have.
Thank you, Anne. John, are you ready to talk a little bit?
All right, so just gonna echo everything. I mean, Mackenzie hit it right on the head. I mean, if we like max 1%, so we can help, so we can get that money, but that extra money goes to those services that actually that really need it. I mean, all of the departments are going to be hit. All of the departments are going to be hit hard, but a lot of the departments, like for instance, the College of Fine Arts, I know that they're adapting, like all the other ones are. They're adapting to what they need to do, and they're allocating money where they can and should be doing it. Myself, I'm one of the programming like for social media, and we're utilizing the heck out of that since we don't have anyone here, so we can't use our programming fund for actual printing. We're going towards using all of that money to go towards everything that we use on social media. So, I mean, the things that cannot be hit as hard as everyone else are the ones that directly help the students, CAPS, all of those direct services like that. So 1%, anything over that is not going to be okay with me.
Risha, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. So, first of all, great discussion, and I appreciate everyone's perspective. But when I was looking into all of this stuff, I agree with each and every single one of you that when we are looking at some of the departments, such as, let's say, student health, counseling and testing centers, student conduct and community program, and all of the above, we cannot cut those programs, as those are the things our student need at this given point. So when you're looking at this, I mean, I personally would like to see the number flat, because as Olivia mentioned, like students are going through a tough time, and we all know this, but we just have to be sure in the steps we take. A suggestion that was given to Mackenzie and I by Jay Golding, that when you make a decision, be sure to be bold in that decision. And it will be a difficult decision, but you have to make those. So if you're looking at something, if you're looking at cutting something, be considerate about who you're like, where the money is going. Obviously, if it's someone's salary, be considerate of that. But if it's going to certain programs that don't exist anymore for at least the fall semester, do you really want to put your money there? And also keep in mind that the departments have saved money during the spring semester. Therefore, even if they get hit a little, I don't see it being super affected as, potentially next or fall semester, we will still be conducting things through Zoom. So with that being said, I would like to see student fees flat. And at the end of it, I want to see that student health counseling, student conduct, prevention services, Office of Disabilities, and CAPS be funded with what they originally asked for.
Thank you, Vijay. Okay, so one thing just occurred to me. Oh, yeah, yes, Maggie.
Another thing I wanted to point out is, like, I don't think we should touch reserves, because we're going to possibly need that to make up the downfall that might happen for the next student fees process. So I don't think we should touch at all if we have already taken that money, I think that's fine. But for what is left right now, I don't think we need to touch it at all.
I completely agree with that. Completely agree with that.
Okay, so just go, Gabe. Did you want to say something?
No, I think Mackenzie had something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Gabe, do you just want to touch on what you said the other day about cash balances and how they'll have that next year? And
Yeah, so I think it was last week, or I don't know. It feels like it's been a while. But Colleen, Ridja, Mackenzie, Katrina, myself, and others, so before the transition, we met with David Miller and Lauren, so the budget office, with Dr. Hall and Dr. Austin, and we talked about the fiscal year 20 deficit in student fees. And I had a bunch of sticky notes everywhere, so I apologize. So our current cash balance in student fees, not including fiscal year 21, is about $183,000. That could have been money left over from previous fiscal years, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be a shortfall for this fiscal year. And so our cash balance in the student fees account will take care of that shortfall, and then we'll remain hopefully theoretically balanced. As far as cash balances that Mackenzie's bringing up, right, you think about, we'll pick on SGA for a second. We are going to be rolling over quite a few dollars because we stopped our programming, we stopped allocating money. So there's just things that we couldn't do because we weren't on campus and there was not a mechanism for us to do those things and spend those dollars. So we're going to roll over a cash balance from our budget to next year. Many other areas will do the same because of adjustments that they had to make in their programming, right? Like the university had instituted a hiring frost. The university had instituted you can't travel. So some of those dollars aren't being expended by some of these areas. So there's a potential for areas, cash balances across the board of student fees for those numbers to exist for the following year. The one thing to think about from there, though, is right, anything can happen that those cash balances could be used for. And so I think Maggie and John bring up a good point about our attention shouldn't be focused on cash balances that we don't know. We won't know what those numbers are until next February anyway, because that's not how, when we look at an end of year cash balance, we look at it during a normal student fees process, not during a time like where, not like this, because the fiscal year isn't over yet. So they could be expending dollars.
If they get back into it, they will know when they reassess.
Right. But not at this moment, right? And so I think that's a good point to bring up when it comes to those. I would say, again, I agree, the dollars we've taken from reserves, we should maintain, because we need to build up our own coffer in student fees, because we're going to be covering this year's shortfall. But then thinking about, right, who knows how else this may impact that we may have to utilize those dollars for the next cycle. When Colleen talked this entire student fees process about this, I can't remember the word now, a contingency fund, we talked about this is what it's used for in situations and scenarios like this. And thankfully we have some dollars in our contingency to be able to expend. So yes, I would, does that make sense, Mackenzie? That's what you wanted? Okay.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I realized that I didn't like talk, so I'm gonna just say what I think. I mean, because I was just saying what I've heard. One thing, Gabe, just want to make sure. I know everyone turned their binders back in, so if anyone needs an electronic copy of the binder, could you send that out, Gabe? Is that something that you could do?
If someone needs it, just let me know.
Okay, could you actually send it to me? Because I know I don't have. I think it's been lost in the.
Yeah. Thank you, Zachary, for being prepared and having your binder. I'm sure everyone else does too. There we go with the binders. Yes, I'll send it.
Maggie, I turned mine in. I'm sorry.
Can I get one, please?
Yeah. And one other thing, and I just thought of this, sorry, Colleen, I'm going to cut you off really fast. Also keep in mind that not all of those areas are U dollars. So not all of them in those scenarios work in the same situation. So again, here's the complexity of everything, because I don't know why things can't just be easy. But, you know, we don't live in that world. Yes, I will send you all the binder if you need it.
Hey, Gabe, can you also send it to me?
Just send it to everyone, and then we've all got it. Okay, so the couple things. The first thing is, you know, as we spoke about building a contingency last time, I don't think any of us expected that it would be quite this soon, that we would need to use it. So that's sort of the first thing. But I don't know that it is actually prudent I think it's prudent to keep some, but I don't think necessarily, I think it could be prudent to keep some, but I don't think it's prudent to keep all of it. So that's the first thing that I want to say about just kind of riffing off of what Gabe said, because that's the whole point of it. It's not to just stockpile up money, it's to make sure that we can bail people out when things get hard, okay? Or ourselves out. So there's that, and by ourselves, I mean like the student fees account. So there's that. And then the second thing is that I think David really hit the nail on the head when he was talking about making difficult decisions with insufficient information. My dad is in the Marine Corps, and he would always say, like, the price of leadership is that you have to make decisions when you don't know what's coming next, right? And you have to be responsible for those decisions. So that's sort of what we're tasked here today with, is that we have to think about, you know, what is going to be the best how can we best prepare student fees and all of these people that we're responsible for, while taking into account the information that we have and considering what possible outcomes are, right? So you have to weigh all of these different things as we have this conversation. And then the last thing that I want to say is I do think we should keep student fees flat. And my reasoning is maybe a little bit different. There's two things. The first thing is that, right, it's partly just to show the students that we actually care about the economic situations that is happening right now, right? The US has a 4.4% unemployment rate. It's growing. And a lot of that, and that hits lower income workers a lot harder than other people. So whenever there's an unemployment crisis, it hits the lower income workers harder. And especially in this time when service industry jobs are gone and lots of jobs that students take are not available or haven't been for the past couple of months. So that's the first reason why I think we need to do this. The second reason is that when we think about increases and the trends of student fees in the past, student fees rarely decreases. Okay, so it's like this cumulative it's like this cumulative increase, right? So 1% 1 year is 4% in 4 years, or whatever, right? So like when we think about this, we have to think about, you know, for our incoming freshmen, what's a 2% trajectory by the time they finish college and that kind of thing. So that's sort of my reasoning behind why I think we need to try to get it flat. And yeah, I think that's all I have, but why don't we go ahead and so just summarizing what I'm hearing, I think we should take an official vote to try to keep it flat. And then if we need to increase later, we can re-vote on that. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay, if there's any objections, okay. So I'm gonna propose that we keep student fees flat from last year with no increase. Is there a second for
Second.
it? Okay, so all in favor, just, can we
You have
raise
to
our,
debate that first.
what?
You have to debate it first.
Oh yeah, we have to debate it. I forget that we have rules. Okay. Is
It's a
there,
democracy, God forbid.
is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? I think we all kind of spoke in debate. Okay, seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. All in favor of keeping student fees flat from last year with no increase, please raise your hand. I can't find the raise hand thing, Gabe. Is it on here?
Yes, but so here's, remember, just like the old rules, you actually have to do a roll call on the student fee number.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. I'll start with Senator Babin. Senator Babin?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Kirk?
Yes.
Senator Morka?
Yes.
Senator Day?
Yes.
Senator Zacharias?
Yes.
Senator Hall?
Yes.
And Senator James?
Yes.
And then
You
I don't know,
you can also call on Ridge and McKenzie since this isn't the actual student fees committee.
I was wondering. Okay. Representative Khan or President Khan
Yes.
and Representative Haas.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Kylie. Okay, so, all right, so now I think it's time, now that we've gotten through that, I think it's time to talk about how we actually accomplish this.
Before we do that, may I make a motion?
Yes.
I motion to, I don't even know how to word this, to like lock in student health's number, like make it untouchable.
So what you could do, Senator Representative James, is motion to just, what is the number, Gabe? I can't see it. Do you have it pulled up?
Yeah, you said student health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So currently with the reduction of student fee, now which number? The number we approved?
The number that we approved.
So that's 924.
Yeah.
So let me show you that. I did some, I don't know if you can see this part here. I did some math of
You
what
did math? Wow.
I know, right?
Plugged in numbers to an Excel sheet.
Don't knock my shine. What happened if we looked at if we kept it 0? And so that is this section right here. So we basically have to find $135,000 to reduce the budget by. And so let me take that back. Column V, no. Yeah, column V already takes into account the no increase to student fees, maintaining the $70,000 in reserves, and then no adjustment for the shortfall. So that's what column V number shows. However, it already reduces everyone's budget to not include that 0%, or not include or what takes it down to 0%. So theoretically, if you want to keep student health at 924, you would have to find $16,000 from someone to cut to put into student health to maintain the 924. So just FYI.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the total number is 16,000, correct, Gabe?
So you need to find this number. Can everyone see that 16?
Yep.
So you need to find $16,232.60 from somewhere to maintain the 924 in student health services.
Okay.
Can we motion to do the same with caps?
Well, we're gonna have to take care of this motion unless Zach wants to amend his motion to.
Yeah, I would like to amend my motion to do the same thing for CAPS as well, counseling and prevention services.
And Gabe, could you please show us what that number would be?
Yes.
Gabe, can you also scroll down a little bit when you get a chance?
Yes. So $5,729.32.
So total 22,000 approximately. Can you get a
Total 22,000, yes.
Okay.
So
So
yeah, that's my motion.
yeah, is there a second?
Second.
Second. The motion has been seconded. So we'll move into the debating period on this motion. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate?
Yeah, can I start off?
Yeah, go right ahead, Senator James. Or yeah.
So yeah, just like hearing everyone speak at the beginning, I think it's important that when we try to find, if we are looking, well, since we have to look for cuts, I think that we should keep these two where it's at, because like I said before, they're going to see a lot more students than other programs, with us being, off campus and stuff like that. Students really need these more than anything, so I think that keeping them untouched is the right way to go.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate? Senator Babin.
Yeah, so I actually don't think that we should do this motion. And the reason I think that is because one, I don't think that we should decrease from what it is, but I think that there's a potential that we could increase it. And so if we vote to maintain it at where it is, then we can't increase it. And I would like to have the opportunity. So if we were to change the motion so that we can't decrease it from where it is now, from where it is from the original proposal that was approved by SGA, I would entertain that. But I think to say that it absolutely has to remain where it is, I don't think is the right move. I think that we should make it so that we can't decrease it from that, but we have the potential to increase it.
Yeah, so we can.
Yeah, I'm willing to amend my motion if I can.
Yeah.
Do
we have to vote on the amendment, Gabe? Or is it a friendly amendment?
It's his motion, he can change it.
Okay.
Yeah, just amend it to where we can't decrease the amount.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate? Senator Kirk.
Yes, I completely agree with Senator Babin. I mean, we're going to, after this, during this pandemic that we're going through and just going forward, these two specific services are going to be like, a lot of people already go to them already. After this is over, so many more people, there is a potential that a lot more people will be going to them because of, I mean, myself and just me, I'm like struggling with tons of things with being cooped up inside and literally haven't seen anybody in a while. And just that alone needs to be thought about. And with the students that would be going into those programs more so than usual, we need to accommodate for that. And I think that we should increase it more than it already is.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate? I'll speak just briefly. Yeah, I think I agree with everyone else's points that they brought forward. Another thing to think about is that CAPS and student health are affordable options for students. The average like medical, if you have good insurance and you're just trying to go to the doctor, it's about $30, whereas at student health it's 10, and then CAPS the same goes, it's $30 to $60 to go see a therapist, and it's a very reduced rate. So just bearing that in mind as well as we have these conversations. So is there anyone else, or did we cover it? Okay, seeing none, we'll go into the voting period on this.
Before we do that, making sure I understand what the motion is. So you are, Senator James, you're asking to lock in student health and counseling and prevention services at the rate in which was originally approved by the Senate. So these two numbers that are highlighted is what you are asking to maintain the rate as.
We wanted to not decrease, not be able to
So
decrease.
not to take this number or this number, but to keep these two numbers.
Yeah. So currently we're keeping those two numbers. The option to increase is there. I mean, it was there, but it's okay. It's not a big deal.
Okay. So then just so everyone knows, so then that 16,000 and that 5,000 would be the differences of money you need to find to balance the budget. Okay.
Yeah. And Gabe?
Yes.
Do you want to see do you want to try to show do you know how to show everyone what that would look like if we took that in addition to the 1.5% as a percentage out of everyone's budget?
Oh, that's,
I know that. Okay.
Don't embarrass me in front of the world, Colleen.
Hold on, wouldn't that just be scenario one? Scenario one would just be the 0%, and then we would just have to find that 22 out of everybody else's.
Yeah, so the column W is everyone's new number.
Yeah, okay, so we've got column W. So we're looking at scenario one, and then what we need to do is take 22,224. What's the final number?
So let's get the vote done first to see if this actually stays. And then we can.
Okay. All right. My hand on this to talk about this item some more, but so first, are we going to raise our hands and then be addressed in that manner, or how is this going to work?
I'm sorry, Crystal. So I can't actually, since I'm not the host, I haven't been able to see people's hands. So I've just been watching people in their video. Sorry, do you want to go ahead, Crystal? If I don't
see the raising of hands by clicking participants.
You can see it now, Colleen. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Gabe. If I don't call on anyone, just yell at me and I'll fix it too. Okay, Crystal.
And I was just wondering if we wanted to have a conversation about prevention services, if that should be added to, while we're at student health and counseling and testing, do we also want to do that to prevention services?
Yes.
Yes.
Is prevention services not the same thing as counseling and testing?
It is. So it's just separated this year, but technically if you protect CAPS, you're protecting prevention services. That's my bad. So theoretically, because it's the same office, it's just this year requested it separately. Next year we'll merge together. So technically you're protecting all three.
So do we need to add Gabe, do we need to add
Crystal?
I'm so sorry. I was just like, or it can be a friendly amendment.
Zach, you want to just say it that way?
Yeah, we can add prevention services. I thought it was the same.
We'll just cover all our bases.
Yes. You're all good now.
Okay.
Okay. So is there anyone else that I missed that's wishing to speak and debate? Okay. I'm sorry about that, Crystal. Again, just yell at me if I miss you. Okay, so we'll move in then to the voting period on this motion. Does everyone understand what the motion is? Good, okay.
Wait, real quick.
Yeah.
Gabe, I know it's not gonna be a big difference, but could you add that $500.86 to the bottom number, just so people can see it?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you.
Oh, I miss Lauren right now.
I know, she's amazing. Okay, so we'll move into the voting period on this motion. All in favor, just raise your hand on your screen if you can. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's everyone.
And Senator, okay. I didn't see Senator Morka, you're okay.
Actually, can everyone just use a yes or no and when you're voting so that we can see the actual number?
Because I can see it now, so we're good. Okay. Yeah, so I think that is everyone. 9 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstain. All right. Or 10 Reja, do you count? Do you count? Yes. Okay. 10 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. All right. So now that we've figured that out, do we want to try to think about what it would look like? So I'm gonna propose something. Yeah, oh, Maggie.
I just wanted to see like what percentage this could take off everybody else's. I know that's a lot of math, Gabe, so I'm sorry.
It is a lot of math, but you got to give me just a quick second to figure it out.
Gabe,
But
what's
just
the total?
The 22,000.
Finding it right now.
Okay, you've got it. Try to help, but I just can't see the screen.
I appreciate
Crystal and Grant also had their hands raised.
Yes. Oh, Senator Zacharias.
So I was actually going to motion that we go to the top and start from the Educational Opportunity Fund. I think that's a lot of the part that's protecting our students. So if we're going to protect health services and that kind of stuff, we should then go into the money that impacts them directly.
Second.
Senator Day, did you have a?
I had something unrelated to that, but I'll wait.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion on the table. We might, if it's okay with everyone, Gabe, do you want us to wait for you to catch up, or do you want us to?
Yes. Give me just 1 second.
I'm sorry, guys. I know this is not as streamlined as it was last time, but I like your dog, Crystal.
Thank you. I have 2 of them now. If you guys want to see, yeah, there's.
Oh my gosh.
This is just one that was barking at me. So.
What are their names?
This is Loaf right here, and that is Carbon.
I love Loaf and Carbon.
Yeah,
I would die for them.
I vote that we only have dogs at every student fees meeting.
Wait, what did you say, Maggie?
I vote that we have dogs at every student fees meeting.
I vote that we do every student fees meeting over Zoom, because being able to drink coffee and eat a snack when I'm getting really tired is very nice.
You don't want a marathon session for 12 hours, Colleen?
I'm good. Those days are behind me.
Kylie says it's too much typing on Twitter.
So I don't know a percent, but I figured out what the dollar amount is.
Okay.
So is that acceptable? Because that's what you're going to get from me. I'm not Lauren. I can't do it. If I did this math correctly, from just the student services program areas, not including EOF dollars, you need to find $866.57 from every line to make up the $22,503.78.
Can you repeat that again? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so this is just from the student services lines, not EOF dollars. So this includes, I don't know why I'm not just sharing the screen. This includes everything from 24 down to 57, excluding the areas like Shocker Sound, because that's not a fund anymore, and some of those other areas. You need to find $866.57. And
from every line?
From every line in order to make the $22,000 up.
Okay, so guys, also very quickly, probably how it would, this is just what my recommendation would be. And I know Gabe, you don't have to do this right now, but what my recommendation would be is that we actually get through siphoning out, who we think needs to have the totality of their budget, or who can decrease and that kind of thing. I think we should take a straight percentage rather than a divided amount, because it's going to change sort of. So like if your entire budget is $800, right, and you take a straight amount from everyone, then that person doesn't have a budget anymore, as opposed to they get hit with 1.5% and they have a whatever. Does that make sense, Gabe?
I gave you the wrong number. It's $1,126.54.
That sounds a little bit.
Need to take out of everyone minus, of course, student health, campus, or CAPS and prevention services. You would need to find, so that's how much you would take from everyone to get you $22,000.
Yeah. Does that make sense though, Gabe, what I was saying?
Yes, across the board is what you were saying. Yes.
Yeah, and like I know Gabe can't do that. Does that make sense to everyone? Or I mean, if not, that's okay. Like if you don't agree with it, that's fine too. But okay. So we do have a motion on the table. We might move into that motion if that's okay, Senator Bevin, and then we can come back. So the motion is to begin at the beginning with EOF, and then go down the list. Is this motion debatable, Gabe?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know why it's necessarily a motion. You can just move.
Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate on this?
Just move up to EOF now. Because Crystal, you're just asking for us to look at EOF dollars.
He's asking us to start. Okay, then we don't really.
So is your question to also exempt those, or to talk about where to take money from?
I'm sorry, I guess I don't understand your question. I just want us to go to EOF because I think that should be like prioritized first, and then we can move on to the rest and like look further into, oh, we need to cut this many dollars.
Okay, so let's see. So yeah, so you can just move on to EOS then, and we can come back to the rest later.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start with the Cultural Ambassador Program. What do you guys, does anyone have any thoughts, comments, concerns on this particular program? So one thing that I will say, I think when we think about
Olivia was actually raising her hand. Sorry, I don't know if you can still.
No, you're good. I can't see when Gabe has his shared screen. I'll just keep you.
Click manage participants again, and you should be able to see it.
Yeah.
I don't Zoom well.
Okay, I'll just pay attention and call on and let you know who's next.
Okay.
So Olivia.
Okay, I got it. Olivia Babin.
Is it possible for, is there like any way that we can also put on this spreadsheet that we're looking at what their fund was for last year, so that I can see the compare what we will be giving them versus what they received last year?
Yeah, so that actually is on here. It's this fiscal year 2020. Oh wait, is it not on here?
No, that's just their request. It doesn't have, oh, it's just further.
Right here.
Yeah.
Now I see it. Okay.
You can see.
I don't really need all of it. I just want to look at 2019.
Yeah.
Or 2020, that's the one. Thank you.
Yep. And then, all right, is there anyone else? Okay.
You can't see me, but sorry. Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
Still trying to figure this out, even though I did it for like a week and a half straight. Can I make a motion that we keep all of the numbers for EOF at their fiscal year 2020 numbers?
So you mean last year's numbers or the adopted numbers that we had?
Like this past year's numbers.
You would be theoretically cutting lines then, because not everyone got money in 2020.
Never mind. Cancel amendment.
Representative Zacharias. Crystal, did you have something?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted and I didn't know. Anyway, so like starting off of what Representative Hull said, I think we should go ahead and for the first line for the Cultural Ambassador Program, go ahead and keep the $10,000 that was allocated for fiscal year 2020.
Okay, sounds good. So there's a motion. Is there anyone wishing to second it?
Second.
Okay.
One more last thing, I'm gonna say this again, sorry. Every single time you maintain the same number, that's more money you need to find somewhere else. So just please keep that in mind as you are processing these decisions. Every single time you keep this, it's different to this, you have to make that money up. So just.
So, Gabe, could you look at what the total for EOF is? Here, can you scroll down?
Yeah,
So,
the new total is 231,880.
yeah, so if you keep everything, you need to find essentially $6,000 approximately.
This is what you need to find.
Sorry. For scenario 1, okay? So added to the 26, right?
Yeah, so you'll add that to the you'll add that to that $20,000 number, yeah.
All right. So there's a motion on the table. There's a second. So we'll move into the debating period on this motion. Is there anyone wishing to speak and debate? Representative Zacharias.
So actually, I think I want to amend my motion. In the whole idea of student fees, $4,000 isn't really that much in like the long run. And I think that we need to just go ahead and keep all of the EOF the same. So I motion for that instead.
Okay.
Do I have to accept that?
So you're going to pull your previous motion and motion now to keep all of EOF the same. Is there anyone who seconds this motion? Representative? Okay. So we'll move into debate on this new motion. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? Representative Davin.
Hold on, you have to give me a second. That changed what I was gonna say and now I have to do more math. So can you come back to me in like 2 minutes?
Yeah. So one thing that I'll say is if we're going to go through each of the departments and consider which things are, which departments might need more funds during this time, I think we should also do this within EOF. And one example that I'll give is that, and Gabe and I spoke about this earlier, for example, like the McKinney-Vento Scholarship or the International Student Fund, or like the Hardship Fund Scholarship, International Hardship Fund Scholarship. Those scholarships are going to probably need more funds, or even, let's see, sorry, like the Disability Support Services Scholarship or the like the HALA scholarship for that one less so, sorry, but there are some funds that might need more money within them during this time because there are students with specific needs during this time. So I think we should keep that in consideration and specifically protect those and maybe even try to allocate a little bit more than what we had previously allocated to them.
I think some new information for that too. All of them have reserves, so I wouldn't necessarily throw more money into those areas because all of them, we didn't touch their reserves during the student fee process.
Yeah.
What do you mean they have reserves, Gabe? Like the
So
scholarships
if they didn't spend all the scholarships, they still have all that scholarship money in their accounts.
Yes, but like McKinney-Vento's brand new.
Right, we've already paid for that for this year.
Yeah.
Like we've already put money in the account
That
for
makes
this.
sense.
But for example, like, and maybe this is something that they come back and look at in September, like, you know, if part of the debate fund is travel and that kind of thing. So if they don't travel or do any of these things that they talked about doing, then like we may all about money. Does that make sense?
I think before you go on, and we should have mentioned this earlier, there's also a process within the student fees statute it's called the supplemental fees process, that allows us to reassemble and revisit the number. So kind of what David Miller was talking about earlier about, like, you know, if we get back together to reassemble, to review the shortfall or something, there's a mechanism for us to pool money if we need to, and to reallocate those dollars. So I don't want us to necessarily, and my biggest advice is I don't want us to necessarily think about what more they will need, because we're still going to potentially deal with a shortfall that we can address later on and revisit. Colleen brought up a good point, right? If debate isn't traveling, then they wouldn't need that 20 grand. And we're not just going to, we theoretically maybe don't just leave the 20 grand there, but they could be traveling, they could do something else. Who knows? I have no idea. But just recognize that we will talk about this again later on as we revisit after those numbers from there. I think Elizabeth Babin had her hand up first.
Babin? Representative Babin.
Thank you. So going off of what I'm looking at here and looking with all these numbers, if there's a like roughly $4,000 difference between what, like if we do whatever is in that scenario one box to what is with what we have potentially done before, I think that there is some room in funds and grants that received more than they received the year before. So like the historically underrepresented student grant received $5,000 more than they did before. And the, hold on, I thought there was one more. The student support services program received $6,000 more than they did in 2020. And so there are things like that that we can reevaluate. We don't necessarily have where we could find that $4,000 and keep everything else the same just for those ones that have an increase from the year before. And that's something that I would rather do than just keep everything the same and have to cut $4,000 from all of the other student programs.
And Senator Babin, just so you know, we didn't increase historically underrepresented student grants. We maintained their fiscal year 20 request when we adopted their new budget.
That's my bad. I was looking at the wrong column, but there are still other ones that have, you know, increases and stuff that we can futz around with.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate? Representative Zacharias.
Okay, so the only two that I'm seeing that actually increased from last year to the recommended this year that would be impacted would be the Student Support Services Program and the, where is it? WSU Student of the Year Scholarship Competition. All the
and
other,
the ADHD.
And the ADHD, sorry. And so if you guys were wanting to move those back to their original marks just as a jumping off point, I would be fine with that, and I would take that as a friendly amendment if anyone wanted to do that.
Can you do the math just to see how much money that gives us?
That would give us, like, that would put us back to the kind of number.
Okay, sorry, I'll raise my hand.
Yeah, oh, Senator Babin.
So Senator Zacharias, so would you be willing to, if we did that and we maintained student support services at their 14,000, reduced ADHD to the 450, and then we gave the money that's left, because if we take away the whole 3,100 from student of the year, that actually puts us at, we've gained money. So we can do it that way, or we could give whatever is like left in that 4,000. So I guess is it that 2,430? We could then allocate that to student of the year and then just give them that amount instead of 3,100.
I don't know who was first, Representative Zacharias or Representative Zacharias. I'll let you answer the question. Is that okay, Representative?
I take that as a friendly amendment. That's my new thing. Yay.
Okay, Representative Hull.
Just as I think it's a point of information. I think that's the terminology. The student support services was with that program that she was starting, and it was still a little uneasy about how she was going to facilitate the program of students doing unpaid internships, but then paying them. So just a point of information for that funding request. If anybody has any additional questions who weren't there, you can ask.
Yeah, I have some questions. I don't know
Yeah.
what that means. So like, are you saying that that program is just like not really well established and that like that's why they didn't receive their full funding request?
So this is the additional funding request that she was asking for was to start a program to pay students for unpaid internships. But when we were asking her a lot of questions about it, it was still a little uneasy of how she was going to actually make this become a reality. So the program overall is for like a library that helps students get books, like textbooks that can be afforded, some scholarships and other stuff. But the additional funding request that she asked for that $6,000 was to help students with unpaid internships be able to pay for them, but it was really shaky, if that makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Representative Zacharias.
Sorry, my hand was still raised from the last time.
Oh, okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in debate? Okay, sounds good. Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period on this motion. And just so that I know and sure what the motion is to keep all of EOF stable, excluding those who received an increase from the previous fiscal year. Is that correct?
It's basically to approve column V, what's currently highlighted.
Okay.
And if that motion passes, then you will balance the EOF fund.
Okay. So all in favor of this motion, please click the yes on your screen.
And of course, if you vote no, click no.
Or no, yeah, in favor or again. Oh, sorry. Are there yeses popping up or do you know?
Yes, I see it.
I'm sorry.
We're just waiting on you to vote, Colleen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
All right, we're good.
Perfect. So, all right. Okay, so do we want to move on into the rest of it? Let's see. Representative Hull.
Can we either go around the square and ask like what departments people think shouldn't be touched first, so then we can kind of have a jumping off point besides cops and student health?
Yeah, but we can do that. All right. So, Representative Kirk, you're at the top now. Do you want to start?
Yes, so this is going to obviously the College of Fine Arts. They asked for $60,000. We allocated $50,000 for them. And the reason why now, like I know that it has been said for like all the other departments, like they have savings from all this, that, and the third. Well, I myself, I work in this office, and I know that a lot of what they like quote unquote could be saving, they're still using to advance different things. For instance, I mean, there are students that don't have to use a program called Aurelia. It's for music major students, and now we're having to use it, so they're allocating to pay for it, so we don't have to. Going further, there are students that are having to do their recital. It's one of the requirements that you have to do to graduate from being a College of Fine Arts major, and they're still doing those, so they are preparing to make those programs. And so to make those programs, it still costs money, and to hit them in that way would hurt every single student in just the College of Fine Arts alone. because it's not something that they just want to do. It's something that they are required to do for their specific majors. It already got hit, which I understood and I was okay with. I don't want it to get hit anymore because this will greatly affect the whole school of College of Fine Arts, from visual arts to performing arts to education majors.
Representative Zacharias.
Okay, so I have a few different departments that I think should be non-adjusted. Do I also say the departments I think should be cut even further, or?
Sure.
Okay.
No, that's going to be too confusing. Let's.
Okay, yeah.
The question first started was, are there any other areas we should not touch?
Okay.
Point of personal inquiry. Sorry.
Yeah.
When we say that we're not going to touch, are we meaning not move from the SGA adopted or not move from the scenario 1 like suggested?
I was just thinking like in general, what you don't think should be touched, and then like us debating on whether that's SGA number or scenario 1 number is like at a later thing. Does that make sense?
So
can we clarify that, like, when we say something that you think that it shouldn't be, like when you say that it shouldn't increase or decrease, or that you're saying it should be from either the SGA adopted or from the scenario 1, because that'll get confusing if we have to debate over that whole thing.
Okay. So first off, for the student services programs, I was actually looking at scenario 2.
Okay, hold up. One more thing. This is going to be too much. Let's just go line by line by line. Student involvement, the new scenario 1 or adopted. I think that's going across the board is going to be too much. Let's just go line by line by line.
thank you, Gabe. I agree. Sorry, guys. We're just gonna.
And at this point, let's only look at scenario 1. We will talk about, just like David Miller's advice, let's talk about the percentage first. Shortfall will be later. So let's just look at scenario 1. All right,
Okay.
let's do that.
Okay. So, oh my gosh. Sorry. Okay. So let's begin with student involvement. Is that at the top, Gabe?
Yes.
Did you have a question? Okay. So since we already agreed on scenario 1, why don't we look through on scenario 1, okay? And then later we can pay attention to other stuff. All right, so currently for student involvement for scenario 1, it would move from the SGA adopted of $1,011,962 to $994,189. Is everyone okay with that movement? Are there any problems? Okay. I don't see any. Is anyone raising their hand? And I don't see it. Okay. Awesome. So do we want to vote on each line item, Gabe?
That will be easier so we can move on from there.
So let's vote on each line item. So I'm going to make a motion to adopt the student involvement budget at $994,189. All in favor? Yeah.
Question. Can we come back and edit that if we need to? Like if we decide that
Yes.
another, okay.
Because we're going to have to go back and fix for $24,000 anyways, so we'll be able to do that, okay? All right, so is there a second on that motion? Representative Hull with the second. All right, so we can move into debate on this motion. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? Representative Zacharias.
So I understand that we were thinking about scenario 1, but I don't think that means we shouldn't be able to discuss other numbers. So the number for scenario 2 was actually one of the ones that I'm not saying that we should account for the shortfall. I'm just saying that those numbers would help us be able to accommodate for the maintaining of student health, counseling and testing, and prevention services. So I am in favor of keeping the number for scenario 2. That's not meaning I'm saying we should look at the shortfall right now. I'm just saying that number should be looked at.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna, I know this is sort of out of like what we usually do, but I'm just gonna propose maybe a broad solution so that we're maybe a little bit more on the same page. What do you guys think about, why don't we go through scenario 1, say this looks okay, and then we can go through scenario 2 as well and amend as we go through. Would that be helpful to conceptualize it, Crystal, or do you want to talk about all of them at the same time? Does that make sense?
I don't know, because how long do we have left of this meeting? Would we have time to do all of that?
That's the thing, is we really don't have time to do these things. So broad strategies are better, if that makes sense. So what I would like to do is just get through at least the 1.5%. And then if we want to talk about
my advice is let's get through the 1.5%. Let's solve one problem first before we look at anything else. And Crystal, I get the point that you're bringing up of that may help us figure out the $22,000 difference. I get that, but let's figure out what that number is first, and then we can fix it in a different scenario to get it back balanced. I think it's going to be too much to look at a different number that's not included in the decrease or increase. Let's just focus on scenario column W, and then we can fix other numbers later if we want to adopt different numbers. Let's fix the $22,000 difference first. I just think that's going to be the best way for us to get to this process with the time that we have.
Representative Haas.
I could be totally wrong, but Gabe, since we don't have to submit this until June, right? So can we make the decision? No? Can we not make the decision to not cut it or to keep it flat and then go back later, or no?
I mean, theoretically, yes, but keep in mind, then the Senate won't be in session. So we'll have to call them back to approve it.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be done by Wednesday so that we can approve it in the Senate.
Okay. All right, so we'll move forward if that's okay with everyone. There was a motion to adopt, and we were debating. Is there anyone else wishing to speak and debate on this motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. All in favor of this motion, please raise your hand.
And again, just so we all know what we're voting on.
Maintaining the student involvement budget at the green highlighted right up here.
Gabe, you're not sharing anymore.
Sorry, I'm trying to get the other math number because I imagine it's going to come up. So this number right here.
All right, seeing 8 in favor and 2 against, and 0 abstention, the motion carries.
I believe Zachary abstained.
Oh, Zach.
I did abstain, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. When you abstain, everyone, can you please put the go slower sign?
I'm clearing it again and do your vote again so I can record the actual vote.
Okay, so motion carries with 7 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention. All right. So with a motion to move on to student health, actually not student health because we already did that. Student conduct and community standards, I believe, is the next.
Child Development Center.
The Child Development Center is the next thing that we have not spoken about. Representative Hull.
No.
Okay. So with a motion to keep Child Development Center at scenario 1, Representative Zacharias.
If we're just gonna go through line by line and like approve for the scenario 1, can we not just do a like mass approval, and then if there's any objections to a specific department, then we address that rather than each single?
That's fine. Yeah, do you want to motion that, Representative Zacharias? Is that good?
Yes, I motion to apply scenario 1 to all student service programs, excluding the ones that were already safeguarded.
Second the motion.
So now there's a motion on the table and it's been seconded. Anyone wishing to speak in debate? Seeing none, we'll take the vote on this motion. All in favor, press the group yes, opposed, no.
I should have brought this up, sir. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it again. You all hate me. I know. I apologize. I would like to just remind everyone that we drastically reduced the CDC's budget already in the original process. They came in with a request, and then by conversations we had with them, they drastically reduced, and we approved that drastic reduce as well. So I would just keep that that in your head, that it is already a drastic decrease from what they submitted and what were approved in the year before. So that additional 5,000 would be on top of the already additional dramatic cut we made. So just FYI.
Okay, Representative Haas.
I was also going to make mention of the CDC because they are planning on opening on May 11th. So they'll be open before the university. And we'll have to have those kinds of operating fees now as well. So just something to think about.
Representative Babin.
To clarify for everyone, because I think that people are a little confused on what we're voting on. So right now we're voting not to just blanket statement approve scenario 1. We are saying that we are just going to, for right now, approve the things in scenario 1 and then go through, and if you have an objection to scenario 1, we're going to talk about the objection, and then we just won't worry about the things that we aren't going to object. Is that what we're voting on? Is that what we're deciding right now?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what Crystal suggested.
So Representative Allen, thank you. Yes. Okay. So we've taken the vote, correct? So the motion carries with Representative with 10 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. Okay. All right. So now if anyone has any exceptions or changes that they want to make, this is the time to propose them. Does that make sense? Okay. Representative Day.
Has the Office of Disability Services been looked at yet?
They don't receive student fee money.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, I thought I saw that. My bad.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to change scenario 1 at all for any Representative Zacharias?
Hi, I say we go to the sunflower now.
Okay.
And then we divide it into the 2 different requests that they have, because right now it's just one general sum of their technology request as well as their general operation. And there were 2 different requests, and I think we should look at them separately real quick.
Okay.
I would just also just remind everyone that we don't get to tell them how to spend that money.
Okay. So Representative Zacharias, do you have a motion?
Yes, I think that the sunflower equipment reserve should maintain at $5,000.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
With the second. All right. So we'll move into debate on this motion. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period on this motion. All in favor, press yes. Opposed, no. Abstentions, go slower. All right. So now seeing as all the votes are in, it is 10, the motion carries with 10 in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstentions. Representative Zacharias, did you have a second motion for the other account within the sunflower?
Really quick, so you're maintaining it at 5,000. That's what it was?
Yes, maintaining at 5,000. Okay. Representative Zacharias, did you have a second motion or no?
I didn't really have a motion, but I kind of wanted to have a tiny discussion if that was possible. I know that the Sunflower has currently suspended their printing. I don't think that we should cut their operation costs because I don't think it's really applicable, but I just wanted to open that up in case anyone did want to talk about it.
You already voted on it, so we can move on.
The operation costs, not the equipment.
Oh, okay.
Is there anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Representative Babin?
Yeah, I think that we should just keep it the same with scenario one. We shouldn't cut it anymore because we need news now more than ever with keeping people informed of what's going on. And this is probably one of the best opportunities any journalism student can have to learn from how to write about these crazy experiences. So I think that keeping it where it is at scenario one is our best option with the operation costs, and not to lower it any more than that.
I'm going to agree with Representative Day. Sorry, I didn't see.
You can go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say I was going to agree with Representative Babin. I think we need to take broad approaches to the way that we cut people. Everyone's going to get hit hard, and if we spread it across all of the departments and try to treat them in an equitable way, it's going to be a lot easier for people to absorb those cuts. So I know that we're all concerned about the way that this is going to affect everyone, but again, right, I think that's part of the price of the leadership that we all have, or the responsibility that we have. Representative Day.
As was brought up, the Child Development Center is currently already received a large cut and it would be cut somewhat further. What?
We need to finish the Sunflower one
We have to finish the motion on Sunflower.
We do? Okay.
If there was a motion. Representative Zacharias.
There was no motion.
Okay, sorry. I thought
There wasn't a motion.
So then we're moving on from the Sunflower.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay, cool. So Representative Day.
Okay, as I said, sorry about that.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, no worries. Basically, the Child Development Center was already cut pretty drastically, and compared to the adopted budget, this would cut them further by about over $5,000. I personally would, even though this would make our job a little harder, I think it would be appropriate to bring it back up to the $29,348. So I would motion to do that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second from Representative Haas. Is there anyone wishing to speak and debate on this motion? Representative Zacharias, is your hand up for speaking debate? Okay, yes.
So I don't support this. I understand that they reduced their request. We didn't necessarily cut them, but they said they voluntarily cut their request themselves. And if we are trying to be fair across the board, I think we should keep it. It is not as drastic, and they're also not providing services at the moment. And we don't know how long it will be before they provide services again. I don't see the need to keep it the same.
Representative Babin.
Yeah, I agree with Representative Zacharias. I think that while childcare is really, really important, I also think that there is the potential that even if they reopen on May 11th, that they won't be back at full capacity, because I think that there are a lot of families who aren't going to want to send their kids, back into another hotbed of germs. And so I think that while their operating costs might be lower for at least a good portion. And I don't really think that it's necessarily fair for us to keep their budget when they did, like you had mentioned before, voluntarily reduce theirs from before.
Okay. I just want to bring up one thing very quickly. Unlike some of the departments that we service, the Child Development Center is revenue driven. So that means that when they operate based off of the revenues that come in from the service that they provide. And since they haven't been allowed or able to provide the service, additional cuts could possibly result in them not being able to operate. Does that make sense to everyone? The distinction between them and then whereas CAPS and student health, who operate also in a revenue model, have been able to operate for the last couple of months. Representative Haas was first, I believe.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to say that they offered up their budget last semester, last go around, and that was before everything went down, and now they're planning on trying to figure out how to reorganize and reopen after the pandemic. So a lot of these costs might go into disinfectant and cleaning supplies and things that are going to be necessary to not make it a bed of germs, like Olivia said, just to kind of keep operating, but also under the terms of the pandemic now. So I don't know. I think that additional money might help them out a little bit.
Representative Babin.
I think that while those are fair points, I think so we are intending on keeping this reserve fund, and like there is potential for if they need more money to operate, that they can then request that after if they cannot operate with their current budget. Is that correct? That's something that they could do?
Just given the amount of like money that was taken out of their budget, that's a question for their budget officer, but like they were reduced by what?
I'm asking if they cannot operate because they receive $5,000 less from us and they need that $5,000 after we pass this, do they have the potential to ask SGA and ask the association for money after this? If that potentially could happen.
Technically, yes, but probably no, because the way that it's very likely that $74,000 is going to get assumed into the amount of money that is lost in revenue for student fees as a whole. Does that make sense? So
yeah, that's fine. I'm asking. I understand that. What I'm trying to clarify is that should we try to make up for the potential that they aren't going to open, or should we try to, not make up for because we're saying that there's a potential they can't open if they don't receive $5,000, but we don't know if that's true. Do we want to give them $5,000 on the off chance that they won't be able to operate without it, if there is the potential for, if they can't operate it without it, that they can then request more money from SGA if that is to happen? Does that make sense?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
And it's just a theory, but theoretically, I mean, taking into account the point Colleen made, theoretically, if the dollars are there, theoretically, yes, but it's just a theory, but it's also a gamble.
Also, the reality is that what we're looking at now, the reality is that that's probably not going to happen. And that's, yeah. Representative Haas.
I think additionally considering, are there other places that we can pull this $5,000 from? I understand that we're trying to be fair across all boards and all departments, but if one department is going to go under, or if there's the potential for the CDC to not be able to open, I would rather be able to cut it from a different area that could take that cut than potentially not let our CDC be open this year.
Representative Khan.
I have something to say, but before that, I just wanted to say Representative Kirk's hand has been up for a while and he hasn't been called on. So if you can go to him first.
Representative Kirk.
Yes, I'm on the same page as Representative Babin. I mean, you're going back and we are going back and forth between a theoretical and a possibility. And like, I know that's how we have to operate right now. And I completely get that. But like they've already been cut a certain amount of money, and I understand that. However, for instance, the College of Fine Arts got cut something, The more I've been thinking about it, I'm willing to cut it a little bit more because of the fact that everyone is going to be hit. Everyone is going to be hit very hard. Now, if they're not able to operate under the certain amount of money that we have given them, there are certain ways and certain places they can go to continue to operate, now if for money or to get certain supplies that they do need. The CDC will, I don't believe, will be shut down. However, it's good. It's like a double-edged sword. It's good to prepare for something that may or may not happen. However, it's also dangerous. It can be both. So I understand where both sides are coming from. Right now, I'm in the middle, but I want everyone to remember what we are here for. We're not here to give more money to everyone. We have to go back and take money away.
Representative Khan.
All right. So I would like to make a suggestion since we are running low on time. I'm not going to make a motion, but I would just like to put it out there since this is a very, like, is what we're debating on. We know that they make their money when their kids who are coming in and, you know, basically they're being taken care of. Since that won't be really happening a lot for the fall semester, they will lose a lot of their money. Maybe since the half of the people don't want to cut it, half of the people do, let's come back to this later on when we've cut other places that we're sure of. And then once that discussion is done, if we still need to cut extra money, then we can look at this. But that is just a suggestion.
I think, sorry to interrupt, I know it wasn't called upon, but I think that's fair. I think I'm going to just withdraw my motion for now. This has caused a lot of conflict and we don't have a lot of time, so I'll just withdraw for now. And if we...
Maggie?
Okay. Representative Hall.
I just wanted to say we always talk about how like we need to like this money needs to go to the most students to affect the most students. There's only 11 students right now who their children go to the CDC. So please keep that in mind. And they're also, just because they're not making revenue, that means they're not spending it either. So they're not spending money on food. They're not spending money on cleaning supplies or educational materials. So it's not just like they're not making money. They're also not spending money either, just like the rest of these departments aren't, as much as like they thought they were going to be spending. So please just keep that in mind.
So would you like to translate that into a motion?
Sure. I motion that we keep it at the scenario 1 number of $294,091.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Second.
Yes.
Okay. So do we, well, I guess we'll move into debate on this period. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? Okay. Representative Kerr.
Yes, Representative Hall made a very, very good point. They may not be spending money, they may not be doing anything or making money right now, but at the same time, they are not spending any money. Besides like probably operational costs for keeping the building alive. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be voting in favor of this motion, and I really strongly urge you to do the same.
Okay. Representative Day.
This is more of a point of order, but I thought we had already approved that and we were just amending now.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Representative Day. I'm sorry. So the amendment would be to add it in, but since it's been approved, we don't really have to do anything with it. Does that make sense, Representative Hull? Okay.
I retract the amendment and
let's move on. Okay. I'm gonna propose. Do you guys mind if I propose something very quickly? When Rija and Mackenzie and I first spoke with the director of academic affairs, like Terry Hall.
Vice President for Student Affairs.
Vice President for Student Affairs, Terry Hall. Sorry. I'm on the porch and someone's dropping mail off for me. When we first spoke to Terry Hall, the one option that she wanted us to talk about in this meeting is giving a broad cut to student affairs and then allowing them to figure out where to put money so that no one gets hit so hard that they can't operate. Each of the directors knows sort of what is within their budget and what is going to hit them so hard that they can't operate, especially given like what could be coming. The conversation was, and it's okay if you guys don't want to have this conversation, but just giving student affairs a broad 1.5% cut and then saying all of the directors, you guys figure out where that 1.5% cut lies.
This is with the stipulation that the departments we have outlined would be buffered. So the ones that we have protected would stay protected.
Would stay protected. They will stay where they are, and then the rest of them, and that is all of those things that have been highlighted by Gabe, will figure out together as a group under, you know, the direction of the Office of Student Affairs, which is the office that they are under, how best to assume that 1.5% cut. Does that make sense to everyone? Is there Representative Zacharias like to speak?
Okay, so have we not, what is the percentage of the cut that we've already like proposed for scenario 1?
1.5%.
So what would we be adding? Like,
so essentially what it would say is that, okay, if we go through and we say student involvement gets a 1.5% cut, Child Development Center gets a 1.5%, student conduct, Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Student Affairs, all these people get that, right? Then they're going to get allocated that money at the beginning of the year, right? And what's going to have to happen then is, like, let's say one of those can't actually operate under the amount of money that they're given, then they have to figure out, they either have to fire people or figure out how to like reduce costs or all these different things, right? But if we give them the collective ability to say, okay, we all need to see a 1.5% cut. These are the areas where that can be like taken on without firing someone, hurting whatever department, right? Making it so that someone can't operate, right? We're all going to try to figure this out together and change our budget so that it takes on that 1.5% cut and cuts in places where people can actually take it on. Does that make sense? As opposed to blanket figuring this for each department.
Let me clarify a little bit more in a little bit more layman's terms. Basically, excuse me, these are the student affairs areas. If we approve column scenario 1, these are their new budgets. So regardless of like whatever the original scenario 1, and now in these areas, it means that what Colleen is bringing up is saying, we are recommending the ones in red, this is what their number will be. Dr. Hall, you as Vice President for Student Affairs need to make up $22,000 from your student affairs areas to balance the budget. So what Colleen is saying is, instead of us trying to figure that out budget by budget, we're saying we're approving a flat rate, which is scenario 1. We are exempting student health, counseling, and prevention services from receiving that 1.5% cut, which means now, Dr. Hall, you need to balance the budget and find $22,000 to maintain a balanced budget. But now it's letting her sit down with these areas and find where the substantial cuts can be made for that 1 year to make up $22,619, which is how much money still needs to be cut from the budget. That is what Colleen is saying.
I think Representative Hull was next.
Wouldn't campus rec be included in this or no?
Sorry, yes, the sunflower, yes, campus rec too.
Yes. Representative Zacharias, I think you were next.
okay, so I understand that. Should we go ahead and move on though, and then maybe address that last, or because I understand giving them the control to figure it out within themselves, but maybe we can just sit on that and like address other areas first.
Yeah, and if that's, yeah, I'm totally open to that. I think that's probably a good idea. I'll let Representative Babin speak, and then we can make a motion to just move to student government and everything that falls under. Representative Babin.
So I have a couple of things. First, I just want to clarify. So basically, student affairs is basically offering to just say we will absorb the cost of not increasing student fees. Is that what they're saying? That they're like their whole department is going to do the entire offset? Or
no, so what they're saying is that the percentage of 1.5% that falls within each of their departments, we just tell them blanket, you guys need to figure out how to make up the amount of money that's within those accounts, right? So if you add up student involvement, child development center, student conduct, Office of Diversity Inclusion, student affairs initiative, Radigan Student Center, and campus rec, all of that money, right, in the 1.5%, you guys need to figure out across the departments where that is going to go and where you're going to make up that money, so that we don't just blanketly do it for all of them and then someone's really not going to be able to operate.
Okay, so then, yeah, So then if we do that, they have to make up $22,531 and we have to make up $81 because the sunflower is not a part of student affairs.
So yeah, we would have to make up the sunflowers within the rest of it, but they're going to have to make up everything. So that 24,000, in addition to all of the other cuts that they will take from the 1.5% in every other department. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. Yes. If that is the case, then I think that we should move on and just look at the rest of everything that's not student affairs and decide if there's anything else that we think should not be cut, and then only try and make up that $88. And then we can come back to whether or not we think that student affairs should just do it themselves.
Representative Holt, did you have a comment as well? Nope. Okay. So I'm going to make a motion that we move on and we start with student government because they're the next on the list, and then go down from there. Is there a second?
You don't have to vote on that. You can just do it.
Okay, let's just do it. So let's go to Student Government Association. I'm going to motion that we keep them at 1.5%. Is there anyone willing to second?
Second.
Don't we not have to second? Because we've already agreed.
Yes.
So we just have to do it if anyone doesn't want to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Is there anyone else that wants to adjust? That we think we should adjust for at least the 4,000 or keep?
Colleen, I think moving on, just say, is there any objection to scenario one?
Okay.
And if someone objects, then we talk about it.
Representative Zacharias, is that an objection or comment, question? Or Representative James, sorry.
It's more of a question for SGA. I know that there are new positions being made and stuff like that. Will this budget affect what they have when it goes to like paying these new positions and stuff like that, or the scholarships that we have?
I mean, the scholarships are in EOF. They've been protected. We figured those out. The rest of it, student government's just going to have to be able to figure out like every other department.
Okay.
That's my. Is there? So we currently have to make up. Is it $4,000? How much is it, Gabe?
11.
Within no.
It's in the AU column is how much we have to make up.
Okay.
So it's going to be $16,000 that we have to find because we originally got an original cut to begin with.
Yeah. Okay, but all we need to make up currently to balance the budget is $88. Do we want to just spread that across every department? Are you guys good with that since it's such a small amount? I'm going to motion to spread it across every department.
Oh gosh, I don't know how to do that.
It's okay. I'll figure it out later. Is there a second?
Second.
Representative Hall, second. Is there anyone wishing to speak and debate on this motion? Okay. All right. So seeing none, we'll move into the debating period. All in favor, press yes, no, go slower.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, hold up, Colleen, hold up, everyone. This is not gonna go well. Let's just focus on getting through scenario one. We will deal with the $8 later. If we decide everyone gets an $8 cut, we will do that later.
Okay.
Let's just do column W and get us through dealing with the 1.5. Is there any objection to the student government's cut? Yes or no? Is there any objection to the other ones? We will deal with the $8 part later. Let's just get through column W.
Are there any objections to any of these cuts that we've already agreed on? Okay. Seeing none. Now where we're standing, we've balanced essentially the budget to make it at, unless we go back, like if we approve the student affairs thing, we balance the budget to make up the 1.5%. Does that make sense to everyone? Representative Zacharias?
I'm sorry, I got dropped from the call earlier. So what happened after I left?
Okay, let me explain. So the question we need to really ask, are there any other budgets in column W to look that anyone has an objection to? Let's answer that question first. Looking from student government down, are there any other objections to these areas?
I have one.
Okay, what is it?
Microcosmos.
Okay. $65 cut.
Give it back. That is my motion.
So then Colleen asked if there's a second to that motion.
Second. I'll second it. Is there anyone wishing to speak in debate? Seeing
Crystal,
none.
you go first. Crystal, you go first since it's your motion. And if you don't have anything, just say you don't have anything. Okay.
All right, seeing none, we'll move into the voting period.
Hold
All in
on,
favor?
I don't understand why we're giving it back. So I need someone to explain it to me if I'm gonna vote either way, because I wasn't a part of the original deliberations. I don't know why we would be giving it back to them. Somebody has to explain.
Okay.
Crystal.
Representative Zacharias, do you wanna explain?
Sure. So Microcosmos, I don't believe that they will be impacted. Like their production won't slow down or anything. It could be easily moved online, as most of it is online anyway. Most of their costs are for publishing and for that kind of thing. And honestly, I don't know what to say. They have made their budget in such detail that every dollar counts. And this is the only source of income that they get. And that's how they do it.
Is that a sufficient explanation, Representative Babin? Okay. Sure. Okay.
If I can, I'm looking at the binder right now and looking at the breakdown of what their costs would be. And like Senator Zacharias or Representative Zacharias said, every single dollar goes to something for Microcosmos and the literary journals. So taking away any like part of their money could affect their mailing costs, could affect their printing costs and stuff like that. And like she said, moving online is something that they were looking into doing as well. So if they move online, if we take away the $65, they may not be able to keep their domain name or purchase a website name at all. So if that helps anymore.
All right, so we'll move. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate? If not, we'll move into the voting period. All in favor, please. All in favor, please press yes, no, no, and abstentions go slower.
And please keep in mind abstentions count as no's.
All right, so with 3 in favor, 1 against, 2 against, and 3 abstentions, 4 abstentions, this motion fails. And we'll move on from there. Is there anyone else with an opposition to the current 1.5 decrease in each of the departments? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to propose that we move back to student affairs and discuss what we said of giving them a broad 1.5% cut across the board and letting them decide what they're going to do with it. Is there anyone willing to second that motion?
I second that motion.
So we'll move into debate on this motion. Is there anyone willing to, wishing to speak in debate? And
I have a question.
Representative Hull, or sorry, was that Representative?
Yeah, you can.
Representative Babin.
Sorry, it's just a quick question. So if they do this themselves, do they have to, will they publish the numbers of like where it's all cut and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all open records, but we can request that they publish it. Honestly,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be a moving thing given, you know, what happens with the rest of the decreases if they happen. But
I also imagine that Dr. Hall would be happy to come to a Senate meeting to explain how she made that money up.
Additionally, Ridja and I will be meeting with Dr. Hall throughout this process, so we can give updates as well.
Representative Hull.
I'm going to be speaking in favor of this because I think honestly, at the end of the day, we don't know where the shortfalls are going to be once fall semester comes around. We don't know where people are going to need money, where they don't need money. And I think if Dr. Hall is willing to work with President Khan, Vice President Haas, and like make this a thing where we're having this conversation constantly and then telling the Senate about it, I feel like I'm perfectly happy and fine with it because obviously she's in a high position and she's their budget officer, so she should be able to make those choices. So.
Representative Zacharias.
So can that be put on the screen once again?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So my main concern is because I remember in the meeting they said that they had one of the reasons one of their numbers was off was because the student affairs assessment money was moved into student affairs initiatives. So I don't really understand this because they move their money around regardless. Like we don't have to give them permission to move their money around. So I understand that we want to give them the liberty to cut themselves, but I think it's at the end of the day, it's doing the same as if we just cut it initially and made it and finished our job to the extent that we committed to, because they can move the money around themselves. They have done it before and they might be able to support themselves better, but I feel like it's more troubling to tell them, hey, find out a way to make up $22,000 rather than, okay, these are the cuts and you can move your money around yourself because we can't tell you how to spend your money.
Yes, Representative Babin.
So I think that's a fair point that Crystal brings up, but if they're planning on or if they can just move their money around no matter what we say, why are we even taking the time and the effort to go through and decide who gets money and who doesn't when they can just change it whenever they want? I think that honestly, our best move is to allow them to do it themselves because they have the knowledge of, okay, that, you know, this certain program has to get X amount of money or else they're not going to be able to run. And that's something, even with our Child Development Center conversation, they would decide that. And so we can change so that we no longer lock in the Child Development Center. And then the Child Development Center can say, this is literally how much money we need if we're going to operate. Then they can make that decision themselves. I really think that this is the best option for us because we don't have the time to go through all of these programs and ask them, what do you need in order to survive? Because we have to make cuts. I truly believe that our best choice is to say that they have $22,000, $22,531 that they need to figure out, and then they can determine exactly what everyone needs in order to survive, and then allocate the rest of their money.
So one thing I do want to say is that, like, just practically, Crystal, you're completely correct. Like, they can move it around and do whatever they need to do, right? And they have that authority. But the process of doing that is actually kind of complicated and really just a little bit of a pain because of the way that the state allocates money, and then the way that they have to do all of it through financial resources and that kind of thing. So if we give them the ability to do it right now, it's going to be a lot easier for them to do that, if that makes sense, and to do it all collectively to get it done. Whereas, like, otherwise they're going to have to figure this all out in a shorter period of time and do a lot more work. I don't know if I'm really describing this correctly, or if you, like, if that makes sense, but Representative Hull.
Sorry, I always forget that I'm muted. So as I think Crystal's point, Representative Zacharias's point goes for and against what she's saying. Because for me, at the end of the day, I think we should lock in the things that we find to be absolutely important. So like health services, and then like caps, and then whatever else we decide, and then let them figure it out. Because as I said before, like at the end of the day, we don't have the answers. And right now they technically don't have the answers either. So letting people have that ability to figure out what does everybody need to function, and then we'll figure it out from there, and then have that extra money that they need to ebb and flow. Because I don't know the internal mechanisms of the Radian Student Center. None of us really do, besides Kevin. So just letting them have that ability to do that, I think, gives them control over this pandemic when a lot of us don't have control over a lot of things right now.
Representative Haas.
I think additionally, this gives us the ability to say, yes, we want these things locked in, and also work with them cohesively to say, okay, now you can do, like, go ahead and move things around, but we want these things locked in. So it's, Crystal's right. We have, or Representative Zacharias is right. They have the power to move whatever they want, but this way we can say, but actually don't touch these things.
Okay. So is there anyone else wish? We do have 7 minutes left unless we extend the meeting. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in debate on this motion? Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. All in favor, click
Can you
yes.
repeat the motion?
The motion is to allow give student affairs a 1.5% cut and allow them to disperse it across each department, and have that explanation in our final that we give to the president.
And the recommendation is to exempt these 3 blue highlighted areas.
Exempt the 3 blue highlighted areas that were already voted to be. So,
okay.
All in favor of this? Does everyone understand the motion? All in favor of this motion, please press yes. Opposed, no, and abstention goes slower. Okay. So the motion carry. Representative Babin, do you have that? Okay. So the
Sorry,
motion,
I did vote yes.
No, you're good. So the motion carries with 10 in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstentions. Okay, so seeing that we have 6 minutes left to finish this.
Can I just recommend that SGA just absorb the $88 and let's move on from that?
Second.
That's what I second. Just put a yes if you're good with it on your.
If no one has an objection, then we'll do it.
Yeah. Okay. So Representative James, did you have a motion?
No, I was gonna do what Gabe said.
Okay, cool.
Great minds think alike.
Right. So kind of as I expected, we didn't get to the conversation on what it would look like, the actual cut or like what happens if there is a revenue shortage in revenue. It's something that I think we should address later. Do we want a motion to extend the meeting by like 10 minutes to talk about?
We don't have that. Ridge and I have to go. So here's my recommendation. Let us approve this. We can come back next week if we have time before Wednesday, and we don't really have to. I mean, at this point, the Senate more than likely will be called back into session, and we can talk about the shortfall at a different point. Let's mull over this, figure this out, look at this, give some time to potentially Dr. Hall and Student Affairs to figure out how they make up that 22. And then we can have a conversation about the shortfall after we get some more information about the impact of that a little bit later. So I think we look at approving this because this is what the question was. We assembled to look at the 1.5. We've looked at it. We've made a thought. This, I hope the numbers make sense. I'm gonna have to meet with Lauren to make sure that she can get my math correct. And then we will take this to the Senate to approve the 1.5. Before then, we can talk about the shortfall adjustment from there, if we want to look at that now. So that is my advice to this wonderful group of human beings.
Yes, Representative Holt, was that a motion? Do that.
Yeah, I motion to pass the budget as we have decided it.
Second.
Second.
You must now do a roll call vote.
Okay, now we'll do a roll call vote. So Representative Kirk.
Yes.
Representative Khan.
Yes.
Representative Day.
Yes.
Representative James.
Yes.
Representative Babin.
Yes.
Representative Moika.
Yes.
Representative Hull.
Yes.
Representative Zacharias.
No.
Representative Haas.
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm going to say yes as adopted, and then
That's 9-1 to 0.
9 to 1 to 0. Representative Hull.
Can I motion to send it to the Senate?
Sure. Representative Hull has motioned to send to the Senate. Anyone with a
Second.
second? Representative James with a second. So that's not a roll call vote, is it, Gabe?
Nope.
Okay, so all in favor, press yes, no, X, goes abstentions, goes silent. Okay, so the motion carries with 9 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention. Okay, so we've got 2 minutes to go. Gabe and I will get together. We'll
Yes.
talk about coming back to talk about if we want to make up the shortfall or talk about making up the shortfall later. Does that make sense? Does that sound good to everyone? Okay. Awesome.
I just want to say before we leave, thank you all again. I know that getting this group again together, lovely. For those who, Olivia, hopefully, you know, this is interesting and you do student fees next year. We'll see. But thank you again. I know we joked last time when we left that we wouldn't do this again, but haha, joke's on you because we did. So thank you. Stay tuned. We'll, the leadership will get together. We'll kind of talk about this, figure out what our next steps will be, and then we'll potentially resume if we need to and go from there.
You guys, if
Cool.
you have objections and all, yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for getting together. You have objections and all of that, think about them. We'll come back. We can talk about it more and we'll get it done down to, you know, what it should look like. Okay. Thank you guys. I'm sorry. It was kind of stressful and a lot for a little bit of time. So.
All right. Thank you all.